when you made your first assassination, your first kill, you were saying that you went up to a rooftop, you were told to wait there, you waited for hours. Finally, your target came out. Can you tell us approximately, I mean, maybe you don't want to give a name, but approximately who your target was? Were they an Arab official or a Jew or who? And then you shot them.
It was an Israeli commanding officer.
Okay, folks, we have a fantastic show. Welcome to Israel News Talk Radio with Tamar, Yonah. A fantastic show, as we promised about a week ago, or a little bit more. This guy, an amazing man who's got a story to tell. Now, he was a killer. This PLO, Fatah sniper assassinated men, ambushed, fought in battles with Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, and became Yasser Arafat's chauffeur and drove him around to secret locations. He hated Israel with a passion. Today, he really loves the Jewish people. Once an Arafat man is a true story about Yasser Saada, our guest today on Solomon's Sword, as you'll see the book that Tamar is holding up today. He is the founder of Hope for Israel, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to say again? Hope for Ishmael. So thank you very much for the correction. Hope for Ishmael, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to reconcile Arabs and Jews around the world, especially in the land of Israel. So glad to have you on as our guest. And Tamar, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Thank you. Very happy to be with you.
Thank you as well. It's very good to have you here. Your story is fascinating. I read your book from cover to cover, very interesting. And I'd like you, if you can, the reason that I wanted to do this interview is because, first of all, it's very interesting to see what the other side is thinking, feeling in any situation. When I watch the news, I want to find out, what does the left say? What does the right say? The conservatives, the liberal left. I want to understand people. And so that was the first thing that brought me to wanting to read this book about a former terrorist. And as you know, I used to interview other people throughout the years, other Arabs who were involved in fighting the Jewish people, and it's been fascinating for me. And now, especially with the Abraham Accords, I thought it would be especially interesting to have him on to see, as many of us believe, whatever religion you are, whether of the three major religions, I think that all of us feel that we are in the Messianic era, that we are heading towards something. And in that era, we all, I think, agree that there's going to be peace. God is going to be revealing himself in the world. And so we're perhaps entering a time like this now. And I just think it's very interesting to see how many Arab nations today are coming to having relations with Israel now. And all of the hatred is starting to dissolve a bit. Not all, but a lot of it, I should say. And so I wanted Tass to come on and tell his story, and then we'll take questions from the audience. If you have any questions, time allotting, we'll ask them to Tass for you. So Tass, with all of that, if you could, I'd like you just to go through your story with our listeners who haven't yet read your book, just to give us, you were born in Gaza, but I'd like you to start just a bit before that, in the time when your father was living in Jaffa, which is right near Tel Aviv, and what happened, why he left, and maybe just start from there and take us through your story.
Yeah, thank you, Tamar. Thank you for having me on your show. And I'm always excited to be with Jewish friends, and in Israel, I feel like always at home. My family have lived there for centuries. And for centuries, I mean, and they go back, I don't know how far back they go, but as far as I know, my ancestors have lived in Jaffa and were orange growers and fishermen. And right before 1948, as the war was building up and the rumors of wars are coming, my father decided he was going to take his brothers, his wife, and his mother My grandfather passed away in the 30s, and take them to a safety in the Gaza Strip. And as we know, the war of 48 was lost by the Arabs. And so my family was stuck in the Gaza Strip. And that's where I was born in 1950.
So in your book, you write that your father was actually partners with a Jew in Israel, and his partner told him, "Stay, don't leave." And he was listening to the Arab leadership saying everybody should leave because we're going to go in, we're going to wipe out the Jews, and then you can come back. And so your father decided to listen to the Arab leadership. Yes.
My father and my grandfather had Jewish workers working and helping in the orange groves. They were not really partnered financially. They worked for my dad. And this young man who was working at the time and advised my dad and not to leave. We'll be okay. He said, we'll protect you. But my dad said, no, I can't. And he left. And this Jewish man, I don't even know his name. My father, all throughout our life in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar, I never really heard him speaking ill against Jews. Against Israel is one thing, but against Jews, I don't recall him speaking ill because of that Jewish man that took on the orange groves and was sending money until 1967. He was sending money to my dad through the Red Cross.
Interesting. You didn't write that in your book. That's very interesting. Okay.
I didn't because there is so much I could not really put in there because of political reasons. Even though my life, since I wrote the book, or before when I got saved, my family was going to kill me for 11 years. But there are things that I just could not put in the book, and some things I could. And as I was released to write that book, I decided there are so much more that I would like to write to add to that book now that it's been since 2008 when I wrote that book. I wrote it in the Gaza Strip, as a matter of fact.
So you were born in the Gaza Strip. This was around 2 months after you were writing, or 2 years after the war, you said, right?
2 months after my birth, my family were allowed to immigrate to Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so, and you wanted to, why did you want to leave the Gaza Strip and go to Saudi Arabia?
Because Gaza Strip is not really our country or our land. We believe that we will go back to Jaffa. And so going to Saudi Arabia in preparation and also for business work, my dad had and his brothers, they were auto mechanics and auto body shops, and they decided they can do better in Saudi Arabia, I guess. It's interesting, good question, because I never asked my dad, why did we leave Gaza? I never really asked him.
Okay, so now you're in Saudi Arabia, and you wrote in your book that you were treated like a second-class citizen. Tell our listeners about that.
A third class, actually. Even we had a citizenship from Jordan. Eventually, my dad was given a citizenship in Jordan, and in the passport it says third-class citizen. First class.
It actually said that in your passport, third-class citizen.
Yeah. Well, the first class is the king. Second are native Jordanians, the Hashemites, and third are the other people.
Oh, this was your Jordanian passport, not your Saudi Arabian passport.
No, Jordanian. We never had Saudi citizenship. We were immigrant refugees. We're treated as such.
So you were never a Saudi Arabian citizen, you're saying?
Never have. And my family is still living in Qatar today, and they don't have citizenship.
Okay. Now, when you were in Saudi Arabia, your father opened up with his family, I understand, a garage to fix cars and also to fix like the dents in cars. You did body work there, and he was very good at it. And he fixed the car of the king or the prince of Saudi Arabia. Tell us very briefly about that.
King Saud. Yeah, King Saud at the time.
And he was very impressed with your work.
Yeah, he was.
And was it the nephew of the ruler in Qatar? He was driving into Saudi Arabia for towards Mecca for the Hajj, and he totaled his car, and it was brought to your father's garage where they fixed it.
You really read the book.
I read the book.
That is true. And that's how we eventually were brought to Qatar. Yeah, because of that prince.
Okay,
Sheikh. We call him Sheikh.
So let me just inform our listeners that he was so impressed, he wanted to take your father back to Qatar. And your father wasn't really interested in leaving. His business was already in Saudi Arabia. It's hard to move and pick up your family. But King Faoud from Saudi Arabia, right? He says, go, it's okay. You have my permission. And that meant he had to go.
The king, yeah.
Okay. So so off your family went to Qatar. Tell us about that.
Well, they've become more influential over there and more rich, actually. They did very well for themselves, my father and his two brothers, and become more of the garage. They started in the construction and import and export, and become very wealthy. Yet, we are still immigrants and refugees and treated as such in Qatar. It doesn't matter how rich we got, we're still refugees or immigrants. And that's pained me, really. I don't understand. I didn't understand why. Why? We are Arabs. We are sons of Ishmael. Why are they treating us this way? And so when at the age of 16 and a half, when we lost the 67 war, I couldn't believe it. I was so mad, I was so angry, I was breaking anything around me at that time. Because how could we lose against such a small armies and such a small country like Israel? How could we lose? I thought, that's it. These Arab leaders are wicked and they're selling us out to the Jews. I'm gonna go fight for my homeland. So I told my dad, I want to go and fight. He said, son, don't think about that. We are sending money to Arafat. Arafat used to come to Qatar and would come to my dad's house and have a feast for him. And so he had a good relationship with Yasser Arafat. So for me, he was an idol. He was a hero. And so when I decided I'm going to go to fight, naturally, I wanted to join him. But my dad would not let me. So I ran away and joined Arafat through Syria.
Now, there were a lot of Arabs that left Israel and went to different places to live. How did Yasser Arafat find your family specifically to go to and be hosted by and befriend?
Money.
So your father was giving money to the PLO.
Very influential in the country also, very close to the royal family. And so that was the connection there.
Now you wrote in your...
He believed in the cause, you know, and I did.
Right. You wrote in your book that you were a very angry teenager, that you felt that your land was stolen, you wanted to go back to your land, and you were angry that the Arab armies and leadership told you to leave, and then they didn't win like they said that they were going to. And then again in 1967, they were reporting, you were hearing reports you wrote in your book that you were winning, and then all of a sudden you found out something different. Tell us.
Oh man, I'm telling you, just listening to the radio, I'm so excited. Yeah, we got them, because that's what the announcers are saying, you know, we have brought down so many airplanes, we've killed so many, and our armies are moving in, and I mean, the whole world was listening and believed this is it, that's the end of Israel, until suddenly it wasn't the case. It was completely different. And so that's why I felt, you know, the Arab leaders are really selling us out. They're getting paid by the Israelis or by the Jews, period. And that was painful. That was painful.
So my follow-up question is, and when I was reading your book also, I was wondering, why were you angry and had this fiery hatred for the Jews and Israel when Israel was the one that was attacked and they won in a defensive war, and it was the Arab leadership that told you to leave and didn't stand by their promises to you? I mean, it seems to me that a person would say, you know what, my leadership has failed me and I'm angry at my leadership. Why was it different with you?
Well, no, it wasn't a different. I was angry at both the Arab leaders and Israel and the Jews, because as far as I understood it at the time, they stole our land, and my dad and all of us, the family, are living and treated, even though they've done very well for themselves, but yet internally you see on the inside the resentment, the unaccepting us as part of that country, as Palestinians. And so my anger and my hatred towards not just only the Israel, also the Arab leaders. And so when I joined, I was angry against Jordan. That's why I took it out on my own to fight the Jordanians too, not just the Israelis. When I was not fighting the Israelis, I'm fighting the Jordanians or anybody that stands with Israel.
So you were saying that Yasser Arafat used to come to your home, your father would host him, you heard him speak, you were very inspired by him, and you decided that you wanted to go off and join the Fatah, the PLO, and your father did not want you to. He wanted you first to get an education, and then you can go in and even become like an officer, like a leader, because you'd be educated. But yeah, you didn't have patience to do that. You decided you were going to run away. Continue.
Right. That's right. Exactly. I thought living in the way that we are living, it doesn't matter how wealthy, how influential we are still immigrants and refugees, and I was tired of that life. It's better for me to die than to live that life. And that's why I joined Arafat and his forces, not knowing really a lot of what their power is and what their abilities are, but I just wanted to fight. I volunteered, I'm gonna fight for my homeland.
So you ran away with 2 other friends, it was? And yeah, to join up. You went to Syria first? I'm trying to remember.
We went to Syria because I didn't want my dad to be following us, hunting us down. So we went to Syria and turned ourselves into the Fatah office in Damascus.
What year was this approximately?
Right at the end of '67, right after the war.
Mm-hmm.
And November, I think it was, '67.
Right. And
then
yeah, they took you on a bus with the windows closed, so you couldn't see where you're going. You were in the bus for hours and you ended up in Jordan in a training camp there, correct?
Yes. After staying in Syria 10 days in interrogation, making sure that we are not spies for Israel. So there was an intensive interrogation for 10 days before they took us to Jordan.
In this training camp in Jordan, when you got there, you were saying that your teachers, your trainers were from North Korea, China, etc., that they didn't
Yeah.
speak Arabic, but you had to learn what they were saying, that they would even, they were ruthless in the sense that they would shoot at your feet to make you move and do what they wanted. And you were saying that you saw a sign there that said that the teachers have a right to kill 25% of the student body. I can call it student body of the soldiers in training there. Tell us about that.
Yeah. As we drove up to the camp, I saw a sign there saying trainers allowed 25% kill in training. And I saw that sign and I thought to myself, I'm never gonna let them get me. So whatever they say, I'm gonna do. And so I made that as a basically a decision that I'm gonna be careful, I'm gonna listen closely. They had some translators, of course, but not that many. The one particular North Vietnamese, North Vietnam trainer was articulate in his way of training, and I liked it. And so I was listening very closely to or watching his signs more so that I can follow his instructions.
So I'm not going to tell people how you became a sniper, but you did become a sniper. And my question I wanted to ask you also is, when you made your first assassination, your first kill, you were saying that you went up to a rooftop, you were told to wait there, you waited for hours. Finally, your target came out. Can you tell us approximately, I mean, maybe you don't want to give a name, but approximately who your target was? Were they an Arab official or a Jew or who? And then you shot them.
It was an Israeli commanding officer. We don't really, I don't like to talk about details of that because it's not something that I am very proud of. It's one of probably, I say that with all of my heart, was one of the darkest times of my life. And so it's not something I like to go back to. I'd like to talk about how much I can make a difference to bring that peace.
Right, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I'm just trying to understand the human psyche, and because when you can do that, you can understand maybe how to, sway people a different way as well. I was wondering, when you did make your first kill, you are now a PLO fighter. Did you feel anything, or were you so hardened that?
Of course, no. It was devastating, and it took 3 weeks before I was, we had some counselors. They understand the effect. As angry as I was, as excited I was to kill my first Jew, but yet when that was done, I took a life of a human being. That began to get in my head. And it was devastating for me for some time to get rehab, basically. And eventually, yes, I was convinced I was doing the right thing, and this is for the homeland.
Right, I understand that. Later on, you talk about when you were in Jordan. This is before Black September. That you were walking around in the streets there looking like Rambo. You had on your bullets and you had your ammunition on you. You even had grenades on you. And you had walked past a Christian house, a home of some Christians, and you had taken your grenade and you tossed it into the house there. Can you tell us why, and also what damage? Was anybody killed, and why you did this?
Yeah, I don't know exactly the damage because I didn't stick around to see what happened afterwards. But that the fact that there was the cross there, and I thought those Christians are what do I say? They are agents for Israel.
Oh,
because there's
agents
a
for Israel.
connection. Yeah, for the Jews. And there is a connection between them, and they are just as enemy as the Jews they are.
So
And
you thought
so-
all Christians were Jewish agents?
Not all. This is my thought at the time. You know, I cannot trust them. And that's my attitude towards the Christians, is the fact that I didn't trust them, because for some reason I had in my mind that Christians are sympathizing with the Jews.
And
I didn't know why at the time.
I hear you. You start out your book actually not at the very beginning of your life, but when you were in a fierce battle with IDF troops. And it was very interesting reading. You were sniping, and then afterwards, when the Israeli helicopters were coming and you ran together with your other comrades in a home or a house there, you were fighting hand-to-hand battle with the IDF troops. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. That was the orders. First, we take out commanding officers, as many as we can, as a snipers on the hills. And then Arafat was on top of the hill commanding us. And then to go run down and engage the Israelis with a hand-to-hand combat, so that the helicopters would not be able to
strike you.
To target us. But it was a bloody battle.
You lost a lot of friends.
I must say the Israelis fought well.
And you said in your book you lost a lot of friends. You were burying your friends later on.
Yes. Well, you know, in the counts that we had at the time, if I remember correctly, we had about 750 of us killed. I was cut up so much in my body. I mean, I was cut up by their knives. So about 750 of our fighters were killed at the time, somewhere around that number. And I think Israel lost at the time 150 some, if those numbers are accurate. But you know, these are what we heard. But it was bloody. It was very bloody.
After you were a sniper, somehow you got to, you were asked to be the chauffeur for Yasser Arafat. Tell us about that.
Well, not really a chauffeur per se. I was asked to take him through dangerous areas because I was a crazy driver. All of my life, I was very.
You wrote about it. Yes.
And so they were asking me to take Arafat through areas that are very dangerous. So that way I would not stop. My orders are not to stop no matter what. And thank God I didn't have to drive over somebody. It was, I was able to get him where he needed to. It wasn't very many times, just a few times.
You were writing that you never knew what your destination would be, only you were notified maybe an hour or so beforehand, and then
the car.
And then only in the car did he tell you, did Yasser Arafat himself tell you where you were going?
Guiding me where I'm going, yeah.
Wow. So what other kind of relationship did you have with Yasser Arafat?
There wasn't really, I wouldn't say that I had a personal relationship, but as we were, as my hero, I always wanted to be close to him. And I don't know how long and how much he felt really towards me, but at the last operation as an assassin, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I went to him. I said, Brother Arafat, I can't do this job anymore. I want to go back to be a fighter. And he said, young man, you are a natural born leader. What you should do is you should go and get yourself more education. and maybe you can fight with your brain instead of your weapons. I didn't waste any time at the time and decided I started preparing. I wanted to go to France to study in France.
To study what?
To study business management and international marketing.
Oh, I was under the.
My dad wanted me to be an engineer.
He wanted you to be what? Sorry?
An engineer.
An engineer.
Yeah.
Right. But it was, I was under the impression in your book that you were, I think around 17 years old, and you were in the PLO, heavily committed to it. And then your mother's brother or your mother's uncle was someone high up there, and he recognized you?
My grandmother. Yeah. My grandmother cousin.
Your grandmother's cousin. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Salah Khalaf is his name. He was killed in Tunisia, I think. But he was walking by, and it was towards the end, right before the Black September battle with the Jordanians. And it was intense at the time. And we knew the Jordanians were going to be attacking. And there he comes through there, and I saluted him as he went by. I knew who he was. He didn't know at the time, but then he looked back and came back and he said, wait a minute, what are you doing here?
Right. So
Yeah.
you were saying in your book that when he recognized you, he immediately called your parents, because your parents didn't know what happened to you for like around 2 or 3 years. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And when you got on the phone with your father, he had convinced you to come back to Qatar, and just for a few days to ease your mother's spirit because she was so worried about her son. And you agreed, you went back, and then they confiscated your passport so you couldn't leave. And your father convinced you to go back to school to get your education. And then he would give you his blessing to go back into the Fatah PLO and be somebody a little bit higher than just a fighter, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That was my dad's intention, and I went back to school because I didn't have a high school diploma. So I was gonna try to get my high school diploma in France, but I went back to school, but I was so angry. I made a lot of mess.
Right. And by now you were a seasoned soldier, sniper. You saw the blood, you saw the death. You weren't like a regular high school student in Qatar. So that must have been very surreal for you going back. And your father actually saved your life because he got you out of there right before, as you said, Black September, before the Jordanian king got fed up with Rambos like you walking around and tossing grenades and making trouble and intimidating people. So you were saved from that.
And really, looking back at all of this, after I gave my heart to Jesus, 19 years or 20 years later, I look back at all of this that I had done, that happened, and realize how many times I should have been killed and I was not. I thought my head was all up to the sky. I'm so indestructible. And it was humbling when Jesus came into my life, realizing that even I was doing evil, God knew my future and saved me from my own destruction. So I look back at all of this and I say, oh my God.
So it comes to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I said, oh my Lord.
So it comes to a time that you're getting into trouble again in Qatar. You're a young, virile young man who's seen it all. And your father finally decides to let you leave the country. And you decide you're going to go to America. He offered you Britain and Egypt, and you hated the British, you said. And the Egyptians, you said, were cowards and stupid or something, right?
Traitors.
Traitors.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so you had a friend in America. You went to America.
Yeah, I really wanted to go to France, and I was preparing to go there, but I decided I wanted to see my friend. We grew up since we were kids together. Wanted to see him, and so I went to America. Didn't know why I was so drawn to come to America when I hated Americans just as much as I hated Israel and the Jews. But when I came to the city where my friend was, Columbia, Missouri, the American people were so nice and so kind to me. I thought, well, I was wrong. I was told wrong. You know, and that's when I changed my mind and decided I want to stay in America.
It was quite humorous when I read that your father didn't want you to go there. He said America is like the big Satan. And as soon as you landed in America and you were being picked up by your friend, the first thing you see in the snow there, which was new to you, by the way, were naked people streaking and running, jogging in the snow. And you thought to yourself, my gosh, my father was right. This is a satanic country, naked people in public running.
Yeah, it was, looking from the airplane, looking down, I didn't know what snow was or any of that. My friend didn't tell me anything. I was wearing short sleeve shirt, and I see this white thing down, and I thought, oh, these people have white sand. So when I landed, I thought, oh my Lord. And then we're driving, my friend is driving, and he's so careful because it was sleek, very, very slidey. So I see this naked guy and running by himself, all totally naked. I'm thinking, what is that? And then right after that, a couple, a man and a woman, running naked. So I asked my friend, what is going on here? I remembered what my dad said. America, the big Satan country. I thought, oh wow, that my dad really was aware of these things. And that began, the idea of really this is a bad country. But then getting to meet some Americans in the college, I was surprised.
I'm wondering, you're saying that you met Americans for the first time and you were surprised, as you said, that they were polite, they were nice, they didn't treat you like a refugee, like a second or third class citizen. What was it like when you met your first Jewish American? Did your mind change at all, or how did you feel?
Angry and really very resentment, a lot of resentment towards Jews, if I knew they are Jews. Sometimes I could tell by the way they look Middle Eastern. And a lot of times I couldn't tell, but if somebody tells me that's a Jew, then I watch, and especially when I started working, when I decided I'm going to marry an American girl and try to stay in America. My intentions was to marry my wife, maybe 2 or 3 years, get my citizen or my residence in America, and then say goodbye. But thank God, she's still my wife 48 years later, and with beautiful grandkids. And so, but when I started working at a French restaurant in Kansas City, and as a dishwasher, then I become a busboy. And I knew some of the customers, the majority of the customers, the big spenders were Jews. So I was really resenting that they were Jews and they were prosperous and they were very generous to me. I never let them see my resentment because they were spending a lot of money. And I thought, well, maybe I'll take their money and maybe someday we'll do something. But thank God I was wrong. I really was wrong about thinking that way.
So it's interesting that you didn't differentiate between the Israelis, but you took it all the way to across the ocean to Jews who had nothing to do with the 1948 war or the 1967 war, but you still hated them.
For us, a Jew is a Jew wherever you are. You don't have to be in Israel to be a Jew. There are Jews outside.
So it was anti-Semitism. It wasn't just, angry because.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Anti-Semitism at its worst. I felt that way for many years.
Okay, I want to speed ahead to your change. So you had met one of your customers, you became friendly with him. He was, I think he was called born again Christian, but he was a very religious man. He believed in Christianity. He brought you onto that. You became a Christian. You had this utter experience that really, you wrote, changed your heart and how you saw the world. All the ugliness of the past kind of dissolved away. You saw this bright future and you started to love people and bring more positive energy into the world. And since then, you have opened up your charity, which is called Hope for Ishmael. And you went to the Gaza Strip with your wife and your children, and you tried to help some of the Arabs there. This was right before the Hamas came in. You were living there in Gaza again? And then after the Hamas came in, they didn't like that you were Christian, not Muslim, right?
No, of course not. The rule in Islam, I can be a heathen, I can be a Buddhist, I can be a Hindu, but to be a Christian or a Jew, then the rule in Islam is to cut my head off. And I knew the ruling. I was a Muslim, so and I knew Islam very well. But the power of how God really reached me was, I could not deny. I could not deny. And then beginning to read the Bible, especially, my friend Charlie, you're talking about, gave me the book of John, and he said, read one of the books in the Bible and read the rest of the New Covenant. And then if you want to read the Old Covenant, then you can do that if you want. So what do? I finish reading the book of John and immediately go back to Genesis, to Torah and the first covenant. And it was the most tormenting time in my life. Going through that, my wife and my kids thought I was going nuts because I was angry all the time, because the first covenant is all about Israel and the Jews. And I didn't want to put up with that. I didn't want to accept that. But I'm so grateful that the Lord really dealt with me in ways that helped me to walk me through that, and realized eventually, I was reading in Matthew, one of the books in the second covenant. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And I was so excited when I read that, because all that I was reading in the Old Testament and the first covenant. And I was excited. I want to be a peacemaker. And I prayed, Lord, help me. I want to be. And then I go back to sit down and I continue to read in the book of Matthew. And then I come to the 43rd verse, and it says, it was said to you, that's Jesus speaking, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. That moment, all the good feeling that I had, that I was preparing, just jumped in my face, and I screamed, no way, I'll never love them. I knew what the Bible is saying to me. I know what the Lord is saying to me. To love my enemies. My enemies are the Jews. I never loved them. And I was so angry and so on my knees crying. And that's really when I heard a voice saying, they've done more than that to me, but I still love them. And that voice broke me. I said, Lord, if you love them, help me to love them. I cannot love them in my own strength. And that's when the change began in my heart.
When you went to Gaza to live there with your family, you wanted to help some of the children and families there that were living very poorly under the PLO and Fatah and Hamas leadership. You took them in. Did you, was your intent also to witness to the Muslims to try to bring them over? Because I understand that, as you said, that you could get the death penalty just for becoming a Christian, let alone trying to convert other Muslims and take them away from Islam. And your own family, you wrote, wanted to kill you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wasn't really that excited about going to the Gaza Strip. I went to the borders, to Erez, and I was not prepared. I did not apply in advance. And you read all of that actually in the book. And the Colonel Nir, who was the commanding officer at the time,
the Israeli officer.
Israeli. I went to the counter and I said, I want to go to Gaza. So the lady at the counter, Israeli soldier, she said, okay, your name, please. So she was looking in the sheet. I said, I'm sorry, you don't have my name there. What do I need to do? She said, oh, sir, you cannot go to Gaza without preparing, advancedly applying at Shem Bet or wherever.
Tass, I'm going to stop you here just because we only have like another 10 minutes now. And this is a story that if somebody wants to buy your book, they can read about it there. How did you get into Israel, though, in the first place? Didn't Israel have information on you that you were once a Fatah member, PLO?
That is the amazing part. Yes. If it wasn't for God, I don't know what else. Because yes, I felt I was wanted by the Israelis. And in 2003, that was the first time I come to Israel as a friend of Israel on a tour. And yes, I was interrogated for hours. I was taken in, and I was.
You didn't write about that in your book.
As I said, some things I left out. And the interrogation took on a lengthy, and the tour was sitting there. I told them, I said, you go and I'll catch up with you if they let me go. Or they catch me or they send me back, whatever, just go on. Because I knew that's going to happen. And, after 14 hours, the officer, it was a Druze officer, actually. The last one that came to talk to me was an Arab, Druze, spoke Arabic to me. And after he questioned me, he said, okay, go and have a good time in Israel.
Interesting.
I was shocked.
Yeah, I'm shocked too.
So I go out to the outside the airport, and my team, 50 people there. And that began my drive to really, when we landed in Tel Aviv, when I came out of the airplane, I went down on my knees and I kissed the ground. I felt like I was home. I was never there other in the dark and the dark days that I've done, my dark work. But when I landed there, I felt I was at home and I kissed the ground.
So you're on a mission, I imagine, where you're trying to do repair work of making the Arabs and the Muslims hate the Jews less, wanting to live in peace, having a value for life. I assume that you are also working with a lot of Muslims to try to bring them over to your religion as well.
Yeah.
But we're in a part now of history where we're seeing a reconciliation. Maybe, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but you're seeing now Arabs who once wouldn't speak with us, didn't want to hear from us. They we're able now to all of a sudden accept the fact that Israel exists and work with us and cooperate, etc. How do you see this now expanding? How do you see this bringing us into a closer relationship where Ishmael and Isaac, Yitzhak, are able, the Jews and the Arabs, the Muslims are able to come together and work together and have peace with each other?
Yes, it's been our prayer as the believers, as the Christians, whether we are Arab Christians or other Arab, our prayer is for peace. And I've always shared with my.
Oh, just a minute, we lost you. I need you to unmute, please, Tass. You're muted for some reason.
Oh,
okay, sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, I had a saying always when I go to speak and say, the hope for Ishmael, the hope of the Arab people, is the hope for Israel. And the hope for Israel is the hope of the world. And the hope of the world is God. And so I've always focused on helping the people that I've led to Christianity from Islam to understand that we were not saved just to be Christians. We're saved for a calling to bring peace. We have fought each other for 4,200 years. It's time for peace. So seeing the Abraham Accord and all of this that's taking place, even though in some ways I am very cautious how this moves forward, but yet in my heart I rejoice that there is some hope. My hope and prayer is that Israel will not move that fast and to cautiously move.
Why? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think there's a danger in?
We don't know. I have a suspicious feeling in my heart that I'm not very comfortable. I don't know why. When I've labored for 20 years and 28 years since I've become a Christian, all my heart or all my work is to bring peace. And now I see something going on. I should be jumping and dancing on the street because of that. But I'm cautiously holding back, waiting and praying to see that this is real.
What's been some of the reactions you've gotten from other Muslims when you try to tell them that you've come to the belief in the Bible and you now agree that the land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people? That's what God wants, that God gave the Arabs their lands, the Muslims their lands, and he gave Israel, the Jewish people, our land. What has been the reactions when you're trying to convince them of this?
Well, I have to approach this very carefully with Arabs, because after all, even those I lead to the Lord and they come to know Jesus, I still have to be cautious how they grow themselves in their spirit and in the work. Yes, the Lord showed me that this is the land of Israel, and I believe that, and I settled with it. But it takes time for my comrades or for my friends that comes to know Jesus before they have to read it in the Bible themselves in order to be convinced in their heart first and then their mind. And so I allow time. And it works. It works. My vision, Kingdom First, is one of the ministries that we've started in Israel, actually. That we bring Arabs and Jews together and we just love each other. We don't talk about the politics. We don't talk about the issue of the land. We don't talk about any of that. We just love each other and let the rest, the Lord do the rest, So this is how I've lived my life for the last 28 years as a Christian. Yes, I've paid many, many prices. I've lost families. I've been beaten up many times. I was left for dead many times. But
by who?
By Muslims.
Where?
By radical Muslims.
Where? In America? In Gaza? Where?
Yeah, in America and in Gaza Strip. I mean, Hamas was came out with vengeance. I was not in my house at the time when they invaded my house and destroyed everything. Took my books, everything. We had a secret church there in my house. And I had a lot of Bibles and a lot of books to the discipling. I led 108 Muslims to the Lord in the Gaza Strip during that time. So I was very, very busy trying to disciple them quickly. And Hamas got wind of that eventually, and they attacked. But my wife and I were in the United States at the time. And when we came back to Erez, wanting to come back to Gaza, but Colonel Near held me back and then said, Tass, I cannot let you go to Gaza. We know that Hamas is waiting for you. And so I was arguing with him. Finally he said, look, Tass, you want to go to Gaza, you want to die, you go to Egypt. You go through Egypt if you want.
And enter Gaza through Egypt, not through Israel.
Yeah, because and it touched me at the time that an Israeli is trying to protect me from me.
And today you live in the United States now, I understand again, right?
I'm back in the United States, but my heart is always in Israel and the West Bank.
I'm going to open up to questions now. Rod, if you want to, you can spotlight yourself, Rod, so we can bring you on and you can read out any questions that any of the audience members have for Tass.
Okay, let me add myself the spotlight. Hey, by the way, Tass, I met you back in 2008 or 9, I believe, in Houston when you came here on your book tour. So
oh, wow.
It was an honor to be able to meet you. Shake hands. Wow. I'm sure you don't remember me. There were too many people
I apologize.
Like crowding around you. You were like a superstar when you came here.
No. I'm a servant of God. That's really
well, I appreciate your humility, but you were very inspiring to hear speak, and obviously you were a very humble man to meet, and I want to thank you very much for that great opportunity. I've actually bought your book and given it to so many people. I wanted them to hear it, and I actually gave it to a Muslim friend of mine. He wasn't sure what to think, but in honor of me, I think he decided, okay, I'll read it and see what it is. So, but anyway, we have a couple of things. First of all, Tar Rawls asked, when they had the sign up there that said, a certain percentage is going to die. Well, was anyone killed?
No, not really. I think it was a tactic in order for us to be alert.
Yeah, sort of counterproductive to try to raise up an army when you're killing them.
There was some light injury in the leg, but not really killed.
Right.
Not that I know of.
I know that most people joining any military, it doesn't matter East or West, you feel like that their goal is to kill you anyway. So that's how it normally works. At this point, I don't see any questions at all. That we don't have any questions right now. So Tamar, we can go ahead and wrap it up if you want.
All right. I just want to ask you one last question because I just remembered now. I watched a video of you being interviewed by some European man. I don't remember what it was. And you were telling him that even after all of this and becoming a Christian and wanting to make peace with Israel, etc., that you still held Yasser Arafat very high in your esteem, that you admired him very much. And I was curious about that because, at least on our side, we look at him as a dastardly terrorist who brought us hijackings and war and blood here, even with Oslo, etc. We see him as someone two-faced. He speaks in English, he speaks nicely, but in Arabic, he tells his people, something else. So I'm curious about that. What are your feelings about Yasser Arafat today?
I think that was right after visiting with Yasser Arafat in 2004.
May have been. I don't remember. Go ahead.
Yeah. As a Christian, as a believer, I'm always praying and hoping that those friends will come to know him and then have the fuller peace so Yasser Arafat was, I looked at him not as my hero, but as a lost soul that also deserves to know the truth. That's how I look at things.
How did you feel when he died?
I was devastated, to be honest, but I had peace to know that that one of my friends led him to the Lord, and he might be in heaven today. We don't know. Just as I prayed for Prime Minister Sharon, I met Omri Sharon at Washington, and I said to him that I want you to know this Palestinian is praying for Prime Minister Sharon. He was shocked. He said, "What?" And so that opened the door for me to come to meet with Prime Minister Sharon and Yasser Arafat. Unfortunately, I was able to meet Arafat, but not Prime Minister Sharon. He was called onto another job that he could not. But, I did pray for Prime Minister Sharon also, for him to find his peace, because for us Palestinians, Prime Minister Sharon was an evil man. So we don't look at him as a hero either.
Right, I understand. Yes.
Yeah. So it's how we take sides. When I become a Christian, I was not taking side. I'm only taking God's side, Jesus' side, only. And so, whoever you are, whatever you are, and whoever the Palestinians are, they are still people that needs God. That's all.
Well, I found this interview fascinating. Your story is fascinating. It's been very, very interesting to read how the other side looks at things, feels, the logic, etc. And I would say for your Hope for Ishmael organization that you could do a lot of good to bring peace and understanding in the world. And, we are cousins. We come from the same father. So we should be, I believe that God wants all of his children to get along with each other. We're different, but that's okay, but we should love each other and get along with each other. And that's how I understand it will be when the Messiah comes and God is revealed in this world. And we are all going to live together in peace, the lion, the lamb, etc. So thank you very, very much for joining me.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you very much for inviting me to be on your show.
Thank you.
I look forward to see you again in the land.
Amen. Should have peace.
Yes. Amen.
Thank you.
God bless.
Hey everyone, to make sure you can get access to all of our interviews, make sure to hit the subscribe button on both our YouTube and Rumble channels. Your click makes us all stronger. Thanks.